Sup, ballers? I'm gonna do something a little different today. Instead of doing some sort of planned content, I just kind of wanted to sit here and tell you guys what my experience has been like over the last couple of years dealing with Uber as a driver. One of the more common complaints that I have been hearing as of late has been the shortage of Uber drivers in the Boston area, and I think that my experience might paint a picture as far as what it is that us drivers have to go through and why we might not want to do that. So the story starts whenever I was living in the DC area. I saw an advertisement where they were saying that if you made so many Uber trips within a given week that they would basically pay for a rental to use. Given that I didn't own a car at the time, that seemed like a pretty good deal because A, I would have liked to have had a car for my own personal use, and B, if they're gonna pay for me to drive for them, why the hell would I not do that, right? So I go through the application process, and there are some issues with that because for whatever reason, they found an old California driver's license of mine that I never provided them and decided to use that for my background check rather than my current Virginia license at the time. As such, whenever they did approve me and I rented the car, I was not actually able to drive in the DC area because it had me listed as having a California driver's license, and it took an entire week for them to sort that out. And to Uber's credit, they actually did refund me the difference for what I paid on the car rental for that week. So they actually did go out and try to do the right thing whenever I was first trying to become a driver. And I thought that at least was encouraging because if something did happen, I thought, well, at least they'll have my back, right? Fast forward 3 weeks to New Year's Eve 2019. It is one of the busiest nights of the year for Uber drivers and definitely the most profitable due to the large amount of surge pricing. Now, while I was driving that night, a customer made a complaint about me that, as far as I can tell, still to this day is unsubstantiated. If you go on Google or Reddit or whatever site that you want that talks about Uber drivers, you'll note that there is a distinct jump in customer complaints whenever there is high surge pricing, and New Year's Eve has some of the most complaints out of any day of the year. But rather than take any of that into account, Uber just deactivated my account with basically no warning whatsoever. Now, I tried calling them on the phone many times. I tried emailing them. I even went to their Uber hub and got absolutely nowhere. So after a few days, I made the mistake of saying while on the phone with them that I should consult a lawyer because I did not feel that I was being treated fairly in that particular moment. And despite me being an independent contractor, I wasn't entirely sure that they were within the bounds of the law. Because I threatened to do that, they basically just blocked me. I heard nothing from them for months. I was deactivated. I couldn't even ride an Uber. They disabled my passenger account. Fast forward 9 months, COVID is everywhere. Businesses are shutting down. I have lost my regular job because of COVID, essentially at this point. So I have been driving for Lyft, and because there's such little demand for Lyft during normal times, much less during a pandemic, I'm completely broke. Out of the blue, I start getting text messages from Uber saying, you can come drive with us again. So I'm like, okay, well, I don't really want to do that, but I figured I'd go ahead and just see, what I can do. If they're actually saying I can drive for them, are they going to reactivate my account? So I responded, and I was basically immediately told by Uber to go screw myself, that my account was deactivated. This didn't sit well with me because they're the ones who reached out to me at this point, so I'm like, well, why are you bothering me if you're not going to let me do the thing you want me to do according to these text messages? I would rather you just left me alone. But leave me alone they did not, and finally, after enough yelling on the phone with these people, somebody actually reached out to me that had some control over why my account was deactivated in the first place. And while no specifics were given, I was told essentially that somebody had accused me of making a romantic gesture of some sort, which is complete bullshit. Literally any coworker that I have ever had would tell you that there have been many times where I have said I would like to ask somebody out, but I can't because I'm working. I have a high work ethic. This is not something that I do, and it's obvious based on the information that you can find online and the circumstances beyond this particular incident that this person was just trying to get out of paying the surge pricing. And that's what Uber does. They just refund you the cost of the ride, no questions asked, and passengers know this, so they take advantage of it sometimes. To get my account reactivated, I essentially had to answer 3 questions, which were, have I ever made a romantic gesture to any passengers? Have I ever asked or given my phone number to a passenger? And I don't remember what ridiculous thing the third one was. And of course, I was very bitter about the situation, so despite my account having been reactivated, I didn't drive for them for a while. It wasn't until about April when I went and rented another car to drive for them again. And for the couple of months after that, my only real complaints about Uber were not getting cancellation fees when I should have, or not getting the surge pricing that was listed, and I'll talk about that in a second. But as far as I can tell, I had no more alleged complaints. I didn't even have any one-star ratings beyond one guy who just wouldn't wear a mask, and rather than canceling the ride, I accidentally ended the ride. Fast forward to July of this year, and I have moved to Boston. And while I love that fact in itself, actually getting set up to drive for Uber here is a nightmare. One thing that you've got to get done in Massachusetts you don't have to get done in most other places is a separate background check other than the one that Uber does from the Department of Public Utilities, specifically the Transport Network Companies Division. Now, when I told Uber that I had moved, I provided them all of my current information. I provided them my license, my current address, my vehicle information, my vehicle inspection reports, plural, by the way, because there is a separate inspection for Uber vehicles. Naturally, the TNC division of the Department of Public Utilities has its own problems, and they denied my background check because I did not have a driving history. Now, while that part is not Uber's fault, they decided to be reactionary and deactivated my account again, and at that point refused to talk to me again. And it honestly doesn't make any sense because Uber knows I have a driving history on account of the fact that I've driven for them. The only way I was able to get that resolved was by actually calling the Department of Public Utilities myself and sending them the information that they needed, which was my driving history from the previous state. Something they should have actually had already, in that I had surrendered my Virginia driver's license when I got my Massachusetts license. I didn't have to take a driving test for that, so where did that come from, right? I mean, there's that, and the fact that Uber could have provided them this information, but they didn't. And after 3 weeks, I was able to finally get it resolved and get my account reactivated. No thanks to Uber, by the way. And I started driving, and I had very few issues after that. I had a couple of customer complaints, apparently, as I received an email about 2 weeks ago saying that somebody had complained and they were going to just not do anything about it, but wanted to let me know. Now, I replied to them asking what it was that I allegedly did, because if I did something wrong, which I don't think I did, and I have a dash cam, which I could prove otherwise, I would need to know what it was so I wouldn't do it again in the future, because that's how you coach employees. That's how you do it. I, however, am not an employee. I'm an independent contractor, so Uber doesn't give a shit. And of course, when I asked for this information, Uber told me absolutely nothing other than to just not say anything offensive. Uber, this is the year 2021. I am pretty sure I knew that. So I continued driving, and I just was a little bit more mindful about what it was that I was saying to passengers, and in fact had taken the tack not to say anything to them because, frankly, everybody's offended by everything these days, and no matter my best efforts, I'm bound to offend somebody at some time. I just don't want to be in an Uber. Well, out of the blue yesterday, I get an email from Uber saying that due to frequent complaints of problematic behavior, their words, not mine, that they have deactivated my account and instructed me to discard my trade dress. Their rationale for deactivating my account is basically, we warned you once and you didn't listen, so now we're deactivating you. But the problem is they didn't tell me what I allegedly did the first time, so I have no idea what it was that I could have improved upon. And I have no idea whatsoever, other than just the term problematic behavior, what it was I did this time. Again, I have a webcam, which Uber knows because you have to register it through the app in order to use it. So they could have asked me for information at any point prior to deactivating me, really at any of these times. And at no point they did. At no point did Uber decide they should reach out to the driver and say, hey, so we're about to deactivate you. We need to know if you have any evidence whatsoever to support why we should not do that. Imagine that you're an employee at some random company and you get fired with very little explanation as far as the reason why. You would be filing wrongful termination suits out the ass. But because I'm an independent contractor, I have no rights, and Uber can do whatever the fuck they want to deactivate me at any time. And that is why, if you were in Massachusetts, you should support the efforts to classify rideshare drivers as employees, because they will actually have rights afforded to them they don't currently have. They will have more job security, they'll have benefits, they'll have a minimum wage guaranteed to them. But more importantly, it would hold Uber accountable, which is something that they are not held to today. But the thing is, I think I know what happened here, because it's the same story as what happened in New Year's Eve. The most common complaint that I get from passengers these days is that the rates are so high. Like, they used to pay $20 for a trip and now it's $80, right? And it's not even surge pricing. That's just the standard rate now, because there's a shortage of drivers and the cost of living in Massachusetts is so damn high. And naturally, I would want to pay $80 for an Uber. I don't want to pay $20 for an Uber. So I could understand if there is a less than scrupulous passenger that knows that Uber will just refund them if they complain. I'd probably do it too. You know who doesn't do that shit? Lyft. Lyft does not just automatically refund you if you have a problem. It has to be pretty serious, and they have to investigate. They actually do tend to side with their drivers a lot more than they do with the passengers in complaints such as this. And well, yeah, if there's a legitimate complaint against the driver, that needs to be dealt with. But the illegitimate complaints are basically just uninvestigated by Uber, and they take the passenger's word for it, and while giving them a refund. They don't see any problem with this business model. And on top of Uber just deactivating me whenever the fuck it wants, they also have a tendency to screw me over on pay. And I've actually got some evidence here to support this. Uber likes to do two things to drivers. They like to screw them out of cancellation fees that they have earned, and they like to cheat them out of surge pricing. And although I don't have any strong proof of the first, because unfortunately, if a passenger or Uber cancels the ride for you, then it just gets deleted somehow if you don't get a cancellation fee, and conveniently enough, you never get a cancellation fee for that, right? But the second one, I have this image I'm going to post in the video right now. So this is the map of the area I was in the other day, and I'm lucky I took a screenshot of this, because you can see here these dollar amounts are the surge pricing. That is the area you have to be in to get that dollar amount. And the arrow, which is underneath that dollar amount right there, is directly in the area of the surge pricing. But if you look at the bottom, it only says that my surge pricing is $1. And of course, if you address any of this with Uber, you're probably going to get deactivated, because they're just screwing you. They know that they're screwing you. They put every impediment in the way for you to get any assistance with your account. So they know that if you do complain, you're not going to get anywhere with it. Of course, if you have problems and have to call Uber, that's an entirely different story in itself, because they like to outsource their call centers to countries whose primary language or even secondary language are not English. So I, as a driver, am trying to communicate actual problems that I'm having to these people, and it's not their fault. They are ill-equipped to deal with their jobs. They are given no tools by Uber in which to help. They always have to forward you to a different department through some sort of form. And that's if they can understand you at all, because believe me, language barrier is a problem. But if you can get through all that, is it really worth doing Uber at all? If you're doing the rental, you can guarantee you'll be working at least 6 days a week in order to make ends meet, because that rental cost will end up being at least $250 a week. Then, of course, there's the gas that you have to buy whenever you're driving everybody around. That's not free. In my case, I purchased a car before I came to Boston and used that, but now I have to deal with maintenance. And it's like, what, is it worth it for me to have to fork out $3,000 to replace a battery in a hybrid car because I'm using all the miles driving people around who don't even tip? Long story short, I probably would not recommend anybody do Uber. If you want to do some part-time ride sharing, go through Lyft. I promise you will not have nearly the headache that you do through Uber. And frankly, I'm kind of glad that Uber decided to be reactionary again and deactivate my account without any good reason whatsoever, because it has now put me in a position in my life that I can go and look for a job. Because while I was making good money doing Uber, I could be doing better. And frankly, do I really want to work for a company that just treats me like this all the fucking time? No. Would you? No. That's why all these people are quitting their jobs, is because they keep getting treated like this. Even the people who aren't classified as employees get treated like shit or work like dogs and are given shit for pay. So that is my experience with Uber. If you've made it this far in the video, I highly recommend you don't give Uber a try as a driver. Seriously, you'll thank me later.